Hi everyone, my name is Brittany Kirkpatrick.
And my name is Ty Whitman.
And we're the hosts of the Beyond the Narthex podcast.
A show where we sit down with members of CK Press and go beyond our narthex and take a deeper dive into the lives of our church family.
Our hope is that each episode will cultivate and encourage new conversations for you, our listeners, with our guests.
Enjoy the episode. Alrighty, well, we are here with Jerry Tomeo. And so, Jerry, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and then go into what's one thing or something that somebody in the church might not know about you.
Okay, well, I'm Jerry Tomeo, and came to the church 33 years ago now.
Wow.
1990 we joined this church. My wife and two daughters. The daughters are grown now and gone, have their own families, and they're both real joy in our hearts, along with those babies, grandbabies. Yeah, we were reasonably active right from the get-go. The girls were young, and I spent a lot of time in their nursery in those days. When they would, and then even after the girls got a little older and were no longer in the nursery, I would occasionally get called in because they'd have somebody that was crying or carrying on, and they couldn't handle them. They'd come and get me. Mm-hmm. And I remember one time, one little boy, he was just crying up a storm, and I had a white dress shirt on. Mm. And you know what happens to white dress shirts when they get wet?
Yeah.
You see right through them.
Right, yeah.
And this poor little guy, he just soaked me. So I had to be sure that I was wearing my jacket, otherwise it looked a little odd.
Yeah.
But I've always enjoyed being around the kids and still do.
Yeah.
As far as something about me that some people might not know, my mother and father divorced when I was about 4 years old. And my father got custody of my sister and I, a younger sister. She was 3 years younger than I was. And that was unusual in those days, which created some interesting thoughts as I was growing up. Because in those days, the mother always got custody unless she was found to be unfit. And so that was kind of it was never talked about, but it was something that was hiding behind my thoughts and feelings because I knew my mother wasn't unfit. And anyway, my father got custody of us, and he left us with his parents, my paternal grandparents, to raise. Full time. Right. And I mean, and that was, he got custody of us, and boom, he left us, and off to Southern California he went.
Okay.
And about 3 or 4 years later, he decided that he was going to take custody of us. I think that was more probably pressure from my grandparents that he do that, because, I mean, we were his responsibility. But there were some hard times. 2 or 3 years that we were with him, there were some real difficult times. No need to get into any of that. But we were sent back to my grandparents to raise. And early on, my sister and I started to refer to my grandparents as Mom and Dad. And even to this day, I will use Mama, Mom, Ma, in reference to my grandmother, and Daddy in reference to my grandfather. And I get some real strange looks from folks that see somebody my age referring to their dad as Daddy. That's something a little child might do. But it was something. It to me, mother and father were more factual. You are a mother and a father. But Mom and Dad were earned titles, titles that express love and respect and honor. And you earn those titles. And my grandparents earned those titles. They were wonderful, wonderful people. But I was exposed to some good things and some bad things, and this might be something that our church family would appreciate. a lot of young people are exposed to only a bad thing. Drug addiction from their parents, alcoholism, physical abuse, all those sorts of things. And that's all they grow up with. That's all they see. So when they become adults, that's their paradigm. That's the way they continue to respond to the world around them. But I was fortunate enough that I had those hard knocks, and I had the good things. And as I got to be an adult, I knew that there was a choice. I could choose the tough side and be that way, or I can choose the side that my mom and dad exposed us to, which is hopefully the way I went. Perfect? No. No. If you're looking for perfection, keep looking. It's
that
not
just shattered
me.
my paradigm.
Yeah. But it's something that I like to have people know, because there's a lot of crisis going on in the world, even in our church family.
Presently, for sure.
And it might help them make choices and decisions, particularly the young kids. But you have to be careful when you're talking to young people, what you say and do. It can become a bag of worms for them, and you don't want that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And where were you? Where'd your grandparents, mom?
They were living in Sunnyvale, California
Okay.
at the time. And when I was growing up, Sunnyvale was a tiny farm town. It was about a third the size of Polsbo. It's only 3,000, 3,500 people. And it was a farm town. I was in Sunnyvale just a month or so ago, and I don't ever want to go back.
It's unrecognizable.
It's totally unrecognizable for me. There was nothing left of what I grew up with. Even the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
The street that I grew up on, Murphy Street, was tree lined. There were orchard trees. There was walnuts and pears, but it was tree lined. All the trees are gone. They just they cut them down. Which is a real shame to me. And the downtown, what used to be little stores and shops, the kinds of things you might have seen even in old Bremerton, privately owned stores and shops, that's all being replaced by 7- and 8-story buildings that are built right out to the sidewalk.
Oh, wow.
So, and there's no identifiable storefronts. So I don't have
It
no
doesn't
idea.
have
I have
connection,
no connection to anything. So I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
Are they, is it Amazon building, or is it,
Right.
you walk in and there's a mall inside. I don't know. I
Yeah.
have no idea what these buildings
Pandora's
were.
box.
Yeah.
Well, so what are your connections then? So if it's not to the place, it's the people, and I mean, how did those connections?
It's heart. It's heart and soul. It's I grew up, and that I'm connected to the experience that I had growing up. But there's nothing left of Sunnyvale that I'm connected to. I was married before, and my older 3 kids live in that area.
Okay.
So that's why we went down to see them. And
You got grandbabies.
great-grandbabies.
Great grandbabies.
Wow.
Right?
Great-grandbabies. My youngest daughter, Jenna, is 3 months younger than my granddaughter.
Oh, wow.
My oldest girl, who's in her late 50s now, yeah, she's got a 33-year-old daughter with
Wow.
two babies.
Man.
Wow, yeah. So is your childhood home still there?
The house is still there,
Okay.
but it's the front of it kind of looks the same, but
Okay.
it's the neighborhood, the heart, the soul is gone.
It's gone. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been so long since we've lived there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just don't. There's no need to go back.
Yeah. So it's your grandmother then probably that taught you how to make handmade pasta. I'm assuming.
Yes.
How should we refer to her also?
Yeah.
As
Mama?
Mama? Call her Mama?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I once I was discussing something with my dad one time, and I referred to my mom as she.
No.
That's disrespectful.
Interesting.
You don't.
You call her Mama?
It's Mama.
Okay.
When Mama, not when she did this. You don't say that. When Mama did this, that's okay.
Okay. Did he call her Mama too? Because it's just.
No, he
relative.
called her Anna.
Anna.
Her name was Anna.
Yeah.
which is my daughter, one of my oldest, Cindy's and my oldest daughter's named Annalise. And I can't say Anna.
Yeah.
I can say Annie, but
interesting.
it's Annalise for me. Where
Yeah.
they might say Annalise, it's Annalise for
Annalise,
me.
yeah.
Just
The Italian.
saying it.
Yeah.
But the cooking thing, my mom was only 5 feet tall.
Okay.
Okay. So when you walk up to a stove and you got that elevation, and then you get the big pasta pot, it's this tall. By the way, I still have that pasta pot.
Oh, that's awesome.
special.
You got that pasta pot. We had a dish called polenta, which is coarse ground cornmeal.
Yeah.
And you cook it, and you layer it in a casserole like you would lasagna, with polenta and then sauce and polenta
Oh,
and
you
sauce
say it so
and
much
so forth.
better than I do when I'm at Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
Instead of polenta. Okay.
Yeah.
You got to cook it.
Yeah.
So you have to stir it continuously when you're cooking it, and it would spatter. Anything bubbling does, and it would burn Mama's face.
Oh, yeah.
So when I was about 7 years old or so, Mama would put me on a chair with the big oven mitt that went all the way up to here on me,
Oh, yeah.
and I would stir the polenta while I was cooking, because you have to stir
Your
it
duty.
continuously, otherwise
Yeah.
it gets lumpy and funky. And I've been in the kitchen with my mom ever since. And I went from that to the ravioli and the sauce and the meatballs and grating cheese and whatever. Mama didn't have a lot of appliances in the house, so you had to learn how to mash the garlic with 2 spoons,
Oh.
or dice it up, or however it was going to be used. She had you probably have never seen one. They're these little crank egg beaters.
Oh. I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I got my first job, when I got out of high school, I bought my mom an electric egg beater.
Did she use it?
She used it.
She did?
She
Okay.
did use it. She was getting older, and she used it.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Is there a favorite dish that she made for that you just loved?
When it comes to holidays,
Yeah.
okay, my folks were Italian, so they have all their Italian things that they like to have for holidays, and Roman Catholic Italians have lots and lots of holidays. But at the holidays, Mom would make a ham and sweet potatoes that everybody else would have. But she'd also make ravioli, or something we call them cavatils, and most people know them as gnocchis,
Oh, yeah.
the potato dumpling,
Ooh, she
potato
make all
pasta,
those.
and I can make that.
Wow. Yeah.
But so she would make, or we would make the raviolis and the pasta things, the Italian cookies and this sort of thing, and that's what we wanted. We ate the ham and the turkey only because Mom made it. That's not what we wanted. That's just we ate it because we didn't want to slight Mama.
Yeah.
And it's.
And that was out of
wonderful.
love. So that kind of
Oh,
action
yeah,
was
lots
always
of-
out of love. Like
And the
loved-
curiosity, like so many families, the older families, we didn't hear the words "I love you"
Sure,
all the
okay.
time. But there was never any doubt that you were loved. It was shown. My dad was very strict, very old-fashioned. They had high expectations, but not high expectations in the sense that you had to get rich. You got to become a doctor or whatever. It was none of that, but it was high expectations that you had to be part of your community and be honorable and trustworthy and those sorts of things. And Daddy was every bit of that. Daddy owned an iron foundry.
Can you explain
and,
that? Like, what that
Iron
is?
foundry, you take steel, iron, and you melt it down in this case, a big furnace, and then you pour the liquid iron out into molds, and you make products out of it.
Wow.
And
Different
he
kind
has,
of cooking.
what's
A
that?
different kind of cooking.
Different kind of cooking, yes, very much so. Dirty, scary operation.
Yeah.
And they raised 3 sons, my natural father, my uncle, and me, and my sister. And my dad did not want me in the foundry at all. My father ended up being a journeyman in, I think, 5 different trades.
Oh.
And one of them was pattern making, where you'd make the wooden patterns that the sand molds were made out of, that you pour the molten metal into.
Oh, okay.
And then he was a model maker, professional model maker, and tool and die and all these sorts of things.
Oh, wow.
And his brother, my uncle, who just passed away here for about 4 years ago now, was a metallurgist.
Okay.
And he owned a foundry as well, but it was an investment casting foundry. And that's where you make the part out of wax. You cover the wax with a ceramic slurry.
Okay.
When you fire that ceramic slurry to give it some strength, the wax goes off as a vapor. It vaporizes. So it's not like candle wax where you melt it and pour it out. And then when you pour the metal into that ceramic cavity, the metal is hot enough where it fractures the ceramic, so it loses its strength. And then you just kind of vibrate it, roll it around, tap on it, whatever, and the ceramic just falls away, leaving the little casting behind. And the casting could be putter heads for golfing.
Okay.
He made those for years. Most of the work was for blowing glass bottles.
Okay.
Some rolling thing that they did with that. I don't really recall how that went.
There's so many trades. This is it's amazing. Yeah, so much with your hands too.
It was all handwork, craft
Craft
work.
work,
You know,
yeah.
it's I make a distinction between craft and art. It's just a personal
And
thing.
I'm sure some would say like one and the same for some.
It can be.
It's
It
an
can
art
be.
form in some capacity.
Yeah.
I'm not enough of an artist to really even know. I feel like we need to get more artists on here for sure.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that. But you had mentioned, Jerry, community. So you said that was what your dad, prioritized, and so community, being connected. Is that where your involvement? I mean, were you in a faith community at that time, or like what was community?
Being Italian Catholic, you basically have no choice. You're born into it.
So you went faithfully. You needed to go.
Always did, yeah. They took us to the little church to be baptized, and that, for me, it didn't happen as an infant like it should have happened. It happened when I was old enough to remember it. I don't know how old I was. But my sister and I were baptized together. And then in Catholicism, you have 7 sacraments, and you can only receive 6. And so it's baptism, communion, confirmation, matrimony, confession, I forgot, is in there. And then ordination, or we used to call it extremunction. They call it blessing to the sick now. And the sacraments, particularly communion, still holds phenomenal importance. But when I was growing up, nuns taught catechism classes, Sunday school classes, and some people refer to the nuns as penguins because of the black and white uniforms that they wore. And I never saw anybody abused. Like you hear these horror stories about the nuns abusing the kids, and I never even heard of anything like that growing up. But they could be pretty severe, pretty hardcore,
Strict, yeah.
very, very strict.
Some order.
No messing around.
Yeah.
When we have a children's church service, the kids would always sit up in the front few rows, and the parents would sit behind. And the nuns, there'd be the boys would be on one side, the girls on the other, and they had these little toys. They're little toy crickets.
Okay.
And during Mass, you'd hear this click, 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 click. You didn't know who had just been caught, but you knew somebody
that's what
got
it
caught
meant.
doing
Interesting.
something.
I
So
see
you just
you.
you just straighten right up.
Oh, I like that.
And nothing was ever said or done. I think
Yeah.
they
Right.
just did it as an attention getter to keep us on edge.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know, but
Oh, that's funny.
I grew up in my Sunnyvale at the time was, we didn't think in terms of minority communities.
Mm.
You know, we had the Mexicans, and there was a difference socially between Mexicans and Spanish.
Mm.
But you had Mexican, Spanish, Portuguese, French, Italians, and then everybody else.
Mm.
Oh, Japanese, a lot of Japanese folks that I grew up with. And we all played together. We all had a wonderful time growing up. It was just no big thing. And a lot of us had the various languages spoken at home.
Mm.
And when we were together, words would slip out. You'd be talking English, and all of a sudden a Spanish or Italian would be
Mm-hmm.
Kind of
thrown out.
adopting all these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we never paid any attention to it. Everybody seemed to know what you meant.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just went on. And even today, they're for me, and I've been away from it for so long.
Yeah.
Italian words still come out first,
Huh.
and it's
Yeah,
excuse me, scusi.
Excuse me.
Oh, I
You know,
see.
I'll bump, scusi. You don't. It sounds so much the same
Right.
that nobody generally pays any attention to it.
Right.
But you notice.
I know. I
Yeah.
notice when it happens.
So kind of to connect the community part to your love for cooking, but also really your love, it seems your love for cooking for church functions.
Mm-hmm.
Is there like for you like a kind of a driving force behind why you enjoy that? Does it call back to your mom?
Yes.
Yeah.
In a single word, yes. When we joined this church, now prior to this, I've only been a member of a church for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. You know, so this
Separate
long,
churches?
yeah, because moving around.
Yeah.
And when we came here, we took the membership class. When you were finished with that and you joined the church, John Haberlin in those days would give us a key. And that changed things for me. That simple gesture of giving that key to me changed my perspective. It gave me ownership. And along with the ownership, I think it gave me a sense of responsibility that I started to grow with. And you know, and in those days, what was her name? Edna Mills, Bob Mills' mother.
Oh, okay.
She was a sexton at the time, and we had no idea how much she did
Yeah.
in the church. Little things, you know, just beyond the normal sexton duties, until she passed away and was no longer the sexton, and little things weren't getting done. But there were several of us. I wasn't alone, but we would come in at night and fix a broken light switch or a leaky faucet, you know, in the kitchen, that sort of thing. Unplug a toilet, you know.
Yeah.
We just did it,
Yeah.
and nobody knew really who did what. It just seemed to get done.
Yeah.
But along that line, we had the Logos program, the nursery program, and these sorts of things, and it just kept rolling and rolling. And I have been blessed, and I really believe I've been blessed with gifts and interests, and everybody is.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the same gifts and experiences and crafts and those things that I've been blessed with. You know, some of them it's just accounting. You know, they're good with numbers, so they'll do that job. But yeah, the cooking thing, I enjoy it. I love it. And when I'm in the kitchen, particularly when I'm by myself, you wouldn't notice it if there's 4 or 5 people in there with me. But if I'm by myself, my mom is standing right behind me. And she passed away in 1998.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And my dad in 89. But she's in my mind, she's in my heart, and she's, you know, and I'll get teased. Why don't you buy your meatballs at Costco?
Oh, yeah.
I think,
Well,
oh,
no, you
God,
can't do
no,
that. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no. So I'm fussy about that, and
But it's calling back this closeness, and you're actually entering it.
yeah.
I mean, is it a stretch to say it feels kind of like a sacred space, or how would you describe that?
Yes,
I mean,
very
Yeah.
much so.
Okay.
When I make my ravioli,
Uh-huh.
I have 2 ravioli makers that I use, and they're little, we'll call them dies for just
Yeah.
to give them the general shape.
Mhm.
But I have one that my mom bought me 50 years ago or more, 60 years ago, and I have my mom's
Oh wow.
that I don't remember it not being there. So
Yeah.
it's at least 70 years old,
Mhm.
Huh.
and they're treasures to
Yeah.
me. They really are treasures to
Yeah.
me. Another thing that I have is pizzelle maker. Pizzelles are Italian cookies.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're very simple, flat wafer type cookies.
Man, we should have asked you to bring all these, and it would have
Yeah.
been a presentation.
The
Cookie
pasta
dough.
pot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for those listening, I mean,
Yeah.
you're open to talking about this,
And I'm
even
open to showing
cooking.
people.
Yeah.
But I have an electric pizzelle maker that makes little round pizzelles, and that's what everybody thinks
Mhm.
about, right? But I have this one that is from Italy that's got my great grandfather's initials
Oh wow.
in part of the artwork in the pizzelle maker, and
Wow.
it's D.I. Dominic Iorosi,
Hmm.
and that is a phenomenal treasure to me.
Yeah.
It's got long handles on it because it was made for open fire, cooking the cookies on an open fire.
Interesting. Okay.
You
Oh,
have to
that's
cook
cool.
them on one side and you roll it
Huh.
over and cook them on the other side.
Wow.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like, I mean, when I cook, I like to do things a specific way, but that's just because that's how I
Mhm.
learned how to do it, or I think it's the right way.
Mhm.
But I've always, but for you, it's not just that you feel like it's the right way, but there's like some real personal attachment to the method. I'm sure like you make meatballs the same way that you made meatballs for the last 45 years.
I try to
Yeah.
make them, the
Yeah.
same way.
Yeah.
Can't always do it.
Right.
There's a soup that we made, a super simple soup, and you take pepperoni, and it has to be the sticks
Yeah.
of pepperoni, and not the big sticks
Oh.
of pepperoni.
Like
It's
the little
dried.
camping sticks, yeah.
No.
Oh, oops.
They're about this long,
Uh-huh.
and they're about a little bit bigger around than your thumb.
Okay.
Yeah,
And you
okay.
slice it up in little 1/4-inch slices or so. Throw it in the pot. You don't cook it. There's no need to cook it, but you just get it hot enough where the oil starts to flow
yeah.
into the pot, and then you pour. I've never measured anything.
Yeah.
A quart of water in there, and you coarse slice up a couple of heads of cabbage.
Okay.
Just chunk them up.
Huh.
It's not shredded like you would make.
Yeah. Sauerkraut.
It's like sauerkraut. Yeah. With it. But you just cook it in there, and you cook it. Add a little salt, a little pepper.
Huh.
That's fun.
Yeah, and toward the end, the last say half hour you might cook it. You might put a potato in there. Just adds a little something else.
Yeah.
But the kids love it. It's a peasant dish.
A peasant dish.
Peasant dish. So
Wait, what does that
it's not. You're not always going to find it at a restaurant.
Oh, okay.
Polenta, you don't
Really,
always find at a
pretty
restaurant.
relatively cheap.
I
Yeah.
see. Okay.
Inexpensive goes a long way.
I don't see that on food blogs really. People
Yeah.
calling
No.
it peasant dishes.
Yeah. No, you
so
don't. Yeah.
It's not listed
Yeah.
on Pinterest these days.
You hear the word, and I don't mean this to sound like a word of profanity,
Yeah.
but peon.
Oh yeah.
You heard that's actually a kind of a variation
Sure,
on a
yeah.
Latin word, peoni. It means peasant, poor people.
Yeah.
And the Italians, or most of the groups from Europe, when they immigrated, if they were well-to-do, there was no need to immigrate.
Sure.
Okay, so for the most part, everybody that immigrated were the peasant working class people. So all the recipes and these sorts of things were simple recipes.
That's a good perspective.
I once read a book. I think it was called "Oh America," and it was when I bought the book, it was billed as the story of the typical Italian family immigrating to America, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
This
You were
guy.
just shaking your head as you were reading
Oh, I
it.
read it. It was
Okay.
terribly difficult reading for him because I was fighting it,
Yeah.
emotionally
Right.
fighting it. But this guy owned a newspaper, I think, in Italy. He came to America, had money when he got here. Most of us came with, $10 in our pocket, or 100 lira, whatever it might have been. And he immediately had a job as an editor for a New York newspaper, had servants in the big house and all this kind of stuff. And now that just isn't the typical story of any immigrant to America.
Right. Yeah.
He shared his story, yeah. You were
Yeah.
like, no.
Yeah, not yours.
Not what I needed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, the presence of your mom, like, being with you, I mean, you're cooking all the time. Certainly we've attended many functions, and even, it could be small, it can
When
be
do
large.
I get to do it again?
I know, I'm so excited, which is great. When would be the next one? We'd have to think on that, but
Yeah.
Well, this Sunday we're having the barbecue, and unfortunately I won't be able to be there.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the shopping tomorrow for that.
yeah, so even when you're not there, you're doing the shopping.
Yeah.
So it's like, you mentioned gifts, and I mean, and I agree, absolutely. I think we all agree there are a variety of gifts, spiritual gifts. Would you call it a spiritual gift? And then is your connection, when you're actively living out your faith, I mean, faith is such a term, right? I mean, how do we live out our faith? What does that look like for you as we talk about cooking? If there's something else that comes to mind, because, we know that you're somebody who fishes, bonsais we haven't even talked about.
Yeah.
But you as an individual, is faith tied into these gifts that have been, they rise to the surface and they're extended, and other people get to, bear witness to that and be part of that. So, yeah, you speak, Jerry. What were you
Well,
gonna say? Yeah.
The bonsai. We've talked about fishing. We've talked about the children. Bonsai.
Well, we didn't talk about fishing here, but
We will.
we will.
Yeah.
Oh. He says, hold up.
Bonsai. It's got to be 10 years or so ago. I did a presentation here at the church
Oh,
for
okay.
I think the women's group at the time on bonsai, and one or two of the women got interested in it and did it for a little bit. But when you take these, in my case, craft type gifts, and you you share them, and you allow people to be exposed through those things through the church, hopefully bringing people into the church so they can appreciate the gifts that they have. They may be different, and certainly they're different than mine, but take the gifts that they've got. I'm terrible with names, but we've got the gal that does the cake decorating, and she makes beautiful cupcakes
Myrna.
and cookies. Yeah, Myrna.
Oh, yes.
And people that have got just gifts of time. They come in and turn the lights on, turn the lights off, lock the doors, just whatever you can do.
Yeah.
It can be something very, very simple.
Yeah.
And you tie the faiths in, or tie the gift into the faith.
Yeah.
The fishing thing, that was something that I started late in life. When I was in my mid-20s, I started racing sailboats, and that was the only activity that I was doing for many, many years, which, by the way, gave me a gift of knowing how to sail, so that when Jesse Mabanglo started the sailing program, where we chartered boats up in BC for a week, I was able to go and participate with that. But Jesse also exposed me to fly fishing. And I tease Jesse when I see him once in a while. I'll tease him about exposing me to this terminal disease called fly fishing, because it can become that. But yes, he exposed me to fly fishing. I started out with one rod, and I've got a whole bunch of rods now. A few of them I bought. A lot of them have been gifted to me, and I picked up some at garage sales and those sorts of things. So. I tie the flies, and now I build fly rods. I can build other fishing rods as well. But that too has become a part of my faith walk.
Yeah.
Particularly when I go by myself. I will sometimes go, if I'm going to fish a creek or a river, the first few minutes I'll just sit on a rock. And I see a beauty there that just give it a couple of minutes for that to sink in.
Yeah.
And you thank God for that first fish you catch of the day, and the screech of the eagle flying overhead that's looking for the fish that you're about to release. There's something that's coming to my mind right now, and it's a little emotional for me, but we've talked about the kids and the gifts and the fishing and the bonsai and stuff. When I look at a child's hands, and if it's my own grandchild, I'll pull off the shoes and the socks and look at their little feet. And you hold them close, and you're doing bonsai, and you're manipulating this plant into something other than what it really might be. Fishing, you're catching those fish, you're cooking, whatever it might be. These are gifts from God. How can you possibly not believe that God exists? That's something that is just... I can't understand how people can look, particularly at a baby, an infant, and look at that child and not believe. It just doesn't comprehend into my paradigm at all.
Yeah. I mean, that's Romans 1, that God has clearly revealed himself, his goodness and his power in nature, so as to leave men inexcusable, or men and women inexcusable.
That's good.
He is clearly, because he is clearly perceived in just looking around, seeing the eagle and seeing and just or watching the way that I've always thought about how interesting rivers are, how they only flow in the direction they're supposed to flow, right? Like water seems, or the fact that the ocean moves a specific way, but looking at children and seeing how each one is unique and different, and we all know that we're all unique and different, but I think because we've been around so long, you kind of miss that part when you see adults, but when you see like two children standing next to, or even like brother and sister, you probably see this so clearly. Like
it's always good to notice, like you're saying. They looked probably very similar when they were both born, and you're like, oh, they're the same. They might be the same person, and then they, at 3 and 3 and 1.5, they have completely different personalities and likes and dislikes and different laughs. And, unique and wonderfully made, for sure. Because Jerry, you are emotional right now, and I feel like that's at the core of however we all are living out our faith, right? Like there is so much. I feel like there should be that emotion to a great capacity, and is it just that there's this overwhelming sense of gratitude, the Holy Spirit? I mean, how would you... And that's okay, we can't explain it always, and that's fine, but...
This may come out a little awkward.
I love it.
But I have seen, being here for over 30 years, I've seen a lot of people that have passed away, leaving family behind. And the grief that you feel, to me, is part of that gift. Because the grief is a realization that God gave you somebody to love, that loves you, that cares about you. And if you didn't love them, if you didn't have that gift of love, when they die, you just shrug your shoulders and go on. You wouldn't grieve. So grieving to me is an expression of faith, an expression of love. And, I hope that when my kids die, they get emotional when I leave this earth, but because I hope that I've done, a reasonably good job with them. But I'm not looking for answers, because those are questions that really have no answers. You did something a minute ago where you were quoting Romans, I think it was. And that's a gift that I've never, ever had.
To recall scripture?
Can't do it. I can. if you say something, I think that's in the Bible,
Yeah.
you know. But to
Yeah.
quote chapter and verse, I've never been able to do that. Like most people, hopefully most people, I've read the Bible.
Yeah.
I've never sat down and read it as a novel,
Right.
Page
Yeah.
after page.
Okay.
But, I've read this part and that part and this,
Yeah.
jumped around, studied it a little bit. But for me personally, it's practicing the faith. It's not reading about it. It's our my Cindy's sister is going to be coming to visit with us for a few days, and she's got a master's in theology.
Okay.
Yes, a master's in theology. Her husband's got at least one PhD in theology.
Oh, wow.
And he's he was a professor. He's retired now. He's a professor at a university in Omaha, and he can quote chapter and verse. You're rattled off, and he knows the Greek and and all those languages.
Yeah.
And
All these gifts.
he's got a set of gifts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't cook.
Right. Yeah.
He doesn't know how to sail. He doesn't fly fish.
Yeah.
But he's an incredible gift.
Yeah.
It's just a different gift set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a good reminder, I think, because there are so many people. John Haberlin told this story in a sermon a few months ago about how there are some people who will look out at what they do, what they're able to do, and feel like they're not serving God or they're not glorifying God because it doesn't seem. They might say it might not seem holy, or if they're not serving the church necessarily. But what you're kind of showing us and thinking about is through the gifts that God has given us by just doing them, and doing them to the best of our ability, and doing them for others in some sense too. But that's how we're glorifying God just by cooking, because we're getting to show everybody this is that's actually there's a piece of God there. That's God's image.
Absolutely.
The creativity.
What did God do with the Sermon on the Mount? The little boy brings up some fish and chunks of bread, and he feeds 5,000 with it. Well, I'm not going to feed 5,000, but the little boy had a gift. He had bread and fish.
Right.
And Christ made the best of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other side of the thing is don't worry about being the best.
Yeah.
Because I am not the best at any of the stuff that I do.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to do it.
Yeah.
And
finding joy in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, I know. I think that is such a helpful outlook when you can call out the gifts in others, or at least try to empower them in that way, because everything that you've been sharing about, you're bringing others into the fold of, these passions and these gifts, so that, they can share their passions, and they can, if they do have a faith that they're walking, or they can at least be in community. And I feel like rather than keeping people out, there's this welcoming in, which is so nice.
There's, I'm sure that there's people that we go to church with on Sunday that are struggling.
Yeah.
I don't know who they are. They don't want to talk about their struggle. But if I can cook a meal, and they can come and share that meal with others, maybe that is a little bit of help, a little bit of nurturing or caring for them that helps them in their struggle.
Yeah.
You don't know. You just don't know.
Yeah.
But it's true. Everyone's got to eat, and goodness, I hope the podcast can't hear this. My stomach is growling so loud. Because we're talking about food.
Yeah.
And when you can't control it, it's like, come on.
We have donuts out there.
Oh,
so
that's perfect.
Yeah.
What a beautiful gift. Yeah.
I'm blanking on what our normal final question has been.
Oh, well, he kind of connected it, with the Narthex. So I feel
That's
like, to bring this around on a Sunday morning, we're all gathered in the Narthex. If somebody were to come up to you after listening to this, and
ask a question, and and I'm ready to go.
Yeah, but you always end up having some unique story about something from California, or I think my favorite story that I tell, and I probably don't tell it right, but about how you your mama could she could, by just touching your,
Oh, yes.
the pasta, could tell you if you put too much eggs or too little eggs.
The first time I made pasta for the ravioli on my own,
How old were you?
oh, I was probably 35 or so.
Oh, okay.
And because I'd always made it with her.
Uh-huh.
Right.
And I never paid any attention because we don't measure
Yeah,
anything.
Go by feel. Yeah.
And when I read the box, because I don't remember how to make the pasta, what's in it, and all it mentions was flour and egg.
Mm-hmm.
It says 1 egg and six cups of flour.
Oh.
Too dry.
Yeah.
So the only source of moisture was eggs. So I kept adding eggs until I got it to the right moisture content. I brought the raviolis to Mama to cook, and they float when they're done. You put them in the pot, they sink, and when they're done, they float. And she just put the spoon in the pot. She was going to cut off the corner of one and see if the pasta was al dente.
Yeah.
And the minute she touched the first ravioli, she says, "You put too many eggs in the pasta." It was that quick. Just her 80 years of experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just little things like that,
I love it. Yeah.
Any time that somebody can find you in the Narthex.
And I don't care if you've heard the stories over and over.
No, well, yeah, I'm the same way. Yeah. I always have to go correct. Tell me, stop me if I've told you this already.
I may not stop even then.
Yeah, that's true because I want to tell the story. There's a reason. So that's
True.
good.
And Jerry also be there to, if you bring your kiddos and you want them to ring a bell, right?
Oh yeah, that's true.
Light some
Yeah.
candles.
There are two things that had me fall apart that come to mind. Now, communion is, for me, is the highest of sacraments.
Mm-hmm.
And we were on one of our sailing trips with Jesse and the high school kids.
Mm-hmm.
And the last night we stopped, and I can't remember the name of the island, but it's directly across the water from Sydney where we dropped the boats off.
Okay.
And we have communion that night.
Mm-hmm.
And my daughter Annie, I said Annie, didn't
You
I?
did, yeah.
My daughter Annie,
Yeah.
Annalise, she was a deacon at the time, a youth deacon.
Mm-hmm.
And she and Jesse served communion. And to receive communion from my daughter,
Yeah.
I was in tears.
Yeah.
I was in tears. And there's a little boy named Leaf. Had him light the candles.
I was like, I know that boy.
Yeah.
We're talking one and the same.
And
Okay.
I picked him up, and I was helping him hold the candle lighter. And I don't know who took the picture. Somebody took a picture
Yeah.
of it
Sweet one.
and gave it to me, and I lost it.
Oh.
Oh. Okay.
It was just in a positive way.
Oh,
It was just
yeah.
so
you lost
meaningful.
it. I thought you lost the picture.
Oh,
Oh,
no,
okay.
no.
Yeah.
We're so
It was just so meaningful to me because
Aw.
the trust in your heart to allow me to pick him up, the trust in his little heart to allow me to pick him up at that moment. He's not always that agreeable to be picked up.
No.
But to me, that was a gift to me
Yeah.
to allow him to do that.
Yeah.
Well, we love you, Jerry, and that
do,
picture. No, it's very true. And Leaf, we can sign off on this maybe, but Leaf loves to say, "See, Jerry, pound it." Yep. I think he learned pound it from you. So.
That's great.
Well, you guys, did you want to go fishing here soon? Did you
with
talk to me
Lee?
about? Were you talking
coming
about
up. You had mentioned it to us.
Okay, good.
But I think that's amazing. You
Yeah.
get so many kids that show up for that.
That's true. Yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you don't already know Jerry,
Yeah.
come say hi.
Yeah.
He's more than happy to say hi, and
Yeah, he's a good person to know.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not the only one.
No,
That's why. Gosh,
Yeah, that's why we're doing this. There's so
many
people in this church that are great to know. So
Yeah.
thanks for having a chat with us and blessing us with your time and your story. I mean, another gift of yours is storytelling. So yeah, thank you for that.
Wow.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I feel like all these conversations to be continued. I mean, they'll keep going on. So
Yeah.
we're glad to be in community with you, Jerry.
Yes, we are. Yeah. Alrighty.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey Brittany, what's a narthex? Yeah, it sounds such like an old churchy word, and I'm sure we have a bunch of our listeners that have no idea what it means. Could you fill us in?
I can, because I honestly didn't know either, and I feel like when people come to our church, I've said meet in the Narthex, and they're like, the what now? So, you're right, it is an old word, and after some research that Ty, you helped with, apparently the word comes from Greek, and it means a giant fennel. So, the term came to be used for church narthex because the area looked like a hollow stem or a tube, like a hollow fennel. So our gardeners will know that vegetable, right?
Yeah.
And the original purpose of the narthex was a place for people to gather who were actually not allowed into the main worship area. It was called the nave, yet they still could hear the sermon. So over time, its purpose has actually changed, and what is a narthex in a church now is not at all what it used to be. Today, the narthex has come to mean more of like a lobby or an entryway where congregants can gather and visit before and after the service, kind of like we do every Sunday.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's really interesting that it has the fennel idea behind it. But yeah, thanks for sharing that. Hopefully that makes our podcast name a little bit more understandable for our listeners.
Moving beyond the narthex.
Yeah.
Get to know you a little better.